Leadership often comes with a familiar tension, the instinct to jump in and get things done versus the responsibility to step back, delegate, and lead. For many leaders, especially those who built their credibility by doing, that balance is anything but simple. So today we're going to dig into the third segment of a four-part series to explore this challenge head on. And it's my pleasure to welcome back Chuck Violen as we continue this conversation. Chuck, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, Jeff. Good to be back.
Great to have you back. Part three, we've been asking questions in these episodes, Chuck, and posting them on social media, and we've been getting some good responses. This one, we hit a nerve.
It did.
What was that question we asked for?
How do you resist the urge to just jump in and do it rather than delegating it? At least that's the paraphrase of the question. I think so many business owners really struggle with that particular issue. Matter of fact, based on the responses that we got, that's exactly what I was picking up from it. There were a lot of responses and they were visceral.
There were some books written on this. Because every time I would see it on a social post to the question, I would send it to you, and it's like some of those I had to scroll a long ways to get the whole thing. So passionate responses, which is what we want,
Yep.
business leaders, managers who have real concerns. But let's dig into what we heard and get your observations, and you can blend in other thoughts as well. But from the responses that we received, do any stand out to you that you just was an aha moment or you were really interested in looking at and analyzing?
Jeff, I think it kind of breaks into two different categories. One of them is, was there a specific item that somebody mentioned? And then the other one is, were there common themes that seemed to pervade all of the responses that we got, not just online, but also to the breakout sessions that I did? And there were some that, specific items. There weren't many, but some of the specific items, I can remember a couple of them said, I just don't want to delegate. I don't want to hand it off. I want to be able to do it myself. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not one to judge that, but understand that you're going to be limiting the size of your company. What I found mostly, though, was the handful of through lines that just seemed to pervade most of the responses, not all, but most of the responses. I think the first one is that the tension that we feel in delegating, in not jumping in, it isn't tactical. It's identity based. The urge to jump in is really about efficiency, and it's more about our identity. Most leaders don't struggle with delegation because they don't know how. They struggle because delegation threatens who they've been. Many leaders build their credibility, their confidence, and their sense of worth by being the fixer, the chief problem solver. We wrap ourselves up in the comfort of that. Doing feels safe, familiar, and it again reaffirms who we are. Many of your viewers and are in the first responder business. So jumping in and solving problems releases an adrenaline rush that we crave. That's just part of who we are. The second one is that jumping in is sometimes right. In other words, it's okay, but you want to make sure that it's by choice, that it's not a reflex. Leadership isn't never jumping in. It's knowing why you're jumping in and what you're teaching when you do. Now, Jeff, I've written in the past about business being about learning. Well, it isn't, it's also about teaching. And most of the time, we're teaching with our actions rather than with our words. When we jump in, that's the lessons that we're teaching everybody in our organization, that we are irreplaceable. Almost everyone agrees on the nuance that doing the work is not wrong. The problem is when we default to it. And that came out over and over. Another through line had to do with delegation. And delegation is not abdication, it's systems design. we build these systems within our organization. Delegation isn't about blind trust falls. It's about building people and systems where trust becomes the obvious choice. A strong through line is that mature leadership stops seeing delegation as handing off work, and they start seeing it as designing reliability into their organizations. And that's a crucial distinction to make. Another one was that we should view the do-it-myself urge as a diagnostic in our businesses and in our leadership. It's not a character flaw. Every time you feel the need to jump in, we should ask ourselves, what system isn't built yet? Who needs developed? One of the most important insights that I picked up from this, especially for experienced leaders, is becoming more aware of the impulse itself. That's what I mean by diagnostic. What's driving that impulse? What need am I trying to fill? Is it a lack of trust? Is it an overactive ego on my part? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves when we're feeling that urge, and then address those urges, those triggers. And then, when we jump in, it's a short-term relief versus a long-term pain. And that's a universal trade-off no matter what business you're in. If you always choose short-term relief, you are guaranteeing yourself long-term exhaustion. It's just that simple. You can't scale with it, Jeff. Here's the part that many people really struggle with. Progress requires tolerating imperfect execution in the short term. It's going to happen. People are going to make mistakes, and there will be costs associated with those mistakes. And many business owners, many leaders, particularly perfectionists, really have a tough time with that. And for good reason. I mean, sometimes those costs are big, but take a look at the long-term return. And then finally, leadership is ultimately measured by absence, your absence, not your presence. The question isn't, did I save the day? It's, did I make myself less necessary tomorrow? Jeff, those were some serious through lines that I was able to pick up through this whole thing. And I thought they were certainly worth sharing with everybody.
Great synopsis of the responses, Chuck. That was good. A couple of things you mentioned at the beginning, how some want to jump in. They want to be, they don't want to delegate.
They don't.
I guess that's okay if that's what you want. It's your business. If you're happy with what you're going to build or not build. Hmm.
Absolutely. And again, it's not a judgment. It's just a condition. And in my opinion, when you figure that between 90, depending on whose numbers you follow, between 90 and 96% of all businesses in North America are under $1 million in revenue. Well, you can do that on your own. That's a me phase business. So basically, I'm in charge. I'm making all the calls. And if that's the business you want, then that's perfectly fine. I'm not judging that. But if you're serious about growing your business and you want it to be beyond just you, at some point, we're going to have to come to terms with the whole notion of delegation.
Hmm. The other word you use, I liked it. It's not abdication.
Right. And I think again, that's an emotional word.
Right, right.
I'm abdicating. I'm judging
It's
myself.
yeah, it's not a good word usually, but so I like how you use that because that's how a person could feel when they're
Oh, yeah.
delegating, that they're abdicating, and that's not the case. You're actually building a system to take care of business. Because a couple of the comments, let me get to them that fit with that and that I noticed. One asked the question, "Do you want it done, or do you want it done forever?"
I thought that was great too. That was
Right.
really good.
If you jump in and fix it yourself, it's done now, but what about next time and down the road?
If you think about your business grows up as you grow up. And when you're younger, you've got a whole lot of energy, a whole lot of adrenaline that you're operating on. At some point, though, that starts to wane. And so while you might feel great about that in the younger years of your business, comes a point in time when you're going, it would be kind of nice to step away from the business, even if just for a week or two, to get away from the business. But the only way that you can do that is if you've delegated things to somebody else.
Another one said that delegation builds people who can solve tomorrow's problems without you. I mean, that's
But
good. It builds people, it builds your team. It empowers them to do more than just respond to your commands.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's not about you being there. It's about you not being there.
Yeah, and another one that falls with that was what happens when you're not in the room? It falls apart. You didn't create something that's going to take care of business. So, yeah,
Jeff,
there's
years
so
ago, I
many.
was working with a guy and he was just going through the early phases of growing beyond just him. And he did a lot of mission work overseas. And I remember vividly that he was very nervous about taking off the first time. It was for 2 weeks. It was a long period of time at that time for him and his business. And we decided, I mean, we put everything in place that we could before he left. And we decided that one of the measures that we were going to use when he got back was how full his desk was of things that weren't handled while he was gone. And it was curious. When he got back, I asked him, so how'd it go? He said, well, I have mixed feelings. I said, well, tell me about that. He said, there weren't any big problems that I had to address when I got back. And it was great that there weren't, but I felt like I wasn't needed. And there's the emotional part.
I could see that.
Oh,
But the reason
100%.
why he wasn't needed is because he did what he should have done before he went on vacation.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. That was a compliment to him. But he had mixed feelings about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. So Chuck, before we pose our next question for everyone to analyze and review and then comment on, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I do, Jeff. We all know that true leadership isn't measured by how often we save the day, but by how well things work when we're not there, like I just got done mentioning about that earlier client. When we're constantly stepping in, the organization becomes dependent on our capacity. When we delegate and develop others, the organization grows in capability. Stewarding people isn't a distraction from results. It is the work that drives them. This is the shift that being the doer to becoming the conduit that I talked about in my breakout sessions, where your value moves from personal output to multiplied impact with the organization. Like I mentioned just a moment ago, the real question for any leader isn't, did I fix it today, but did I make myself less necessary tomorrow?
Good words, Chuck. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to put on screen as you talk. Tell us our next topic, our next question.
Next question is, how do you want the next generation to view you and the role you've played?
Say it one
Yep,
more time for us.
here it is. How do you want the next generation to view you and the role you've played?
Got it. Well, Chuck, I'll see you on part 4 in an upcoming episode.
Yes, you will. I'm looking forward to it.